From the Center for Conscious Communication, this is Leading Life. Hi, everyone. I'm Stacey Caruth, the founder of the Center for Conscious Communication, and this is Leading Life, a podcast spotlighting women business leaders who are making a difference, following their passion and challenging the status quo. Today, my guest is Sam Harkins from Lee Brennon Charles. Hi, Sam. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to talk to you today. Sam, can you tell me a little bit about Lee Brennon Charles? And then I'd like to go back to the beginning and more of your early days. But can you tell me a little bit about the current store that you have going on right now?
So currently our location is in the Wolcott Galleria building. I started Lee Brennon Charles in my garage, just really on kind of a whim from some family members, just always liking the way I decorated and always kind of seeing that passion that I've had. And of course, like being a newlywed and you have a new house and all those kind of things. So I was just constantly decorating and redecorating. My mother-in-law actually had just brought up that I should open up a store. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And of course, know nothing about retail, know nothing about having a store. So of course I was like, okay, well, we can give it a try. And my husband actually is the one who recommended we start it in our garage, just kind of as it's kind of a little stepping stone to kind of test the waters. And so we originally started in our garage, and we moved into our new location in October. So October of 2022.
Yay. So you carry home decorating items. You have furniture and you have candles and you have accessories, and all of that can be found in your store at the Wolcott Galleria.
Yep. And when I originally started the store, it was really focused on refinishing furniture. I had a paint line that I carried, and then of course decor accessories and stuff like that. And I have transitioned over the last couple of years. So I opened in 2017. So I kind of transitioned some things. And I think that that's just kind of a integral part of business. Is it's constantly kind of evolving, and it can be evolving because you make it evolve, or it can evolve because you have to. And so I got to the point where I couldn't keep up. I couldn't do the retail aspect of like working in the store plus doing all the refinishing. And part of that was because I got rid of my refinishing place, which was our garage. So I was like doing all of this stuff like in this really small space. And at the time I was still doing cosmetology. So I had a salon in my house, and so I was doing that too. So it was just a lot. And so I learned very quickly that it was not sustainable to do all those things. So that's kind of how it started. And then I have evolved more into giftable stuff, and I do have decor, and I do have some pieces of furniture. But like kind of as right now, as it sits, our biggest thing is candles and wax melts and our kind of scented products. So candles, wax melts, room sprays, perfumes, reed diffusers, all of that kind of stuff. So we make all of that in-house. If it has Lee Brennon Charles Candle Co. on it, that's all made in-house. And then, of course, since I've been down at the Galleria, I've definitely leaned more into the gift-giving stuff, mainly women-based gift-giving stuff that just really panders to pampering women. Have brought in some clothes, not a lot, but just a little bit. And then, of course, we do still have decor items and stuff like that. And then, obviously, our candles and stuff like that.
Well, lovely. I can say it is a beautiful space, a space that just feels good when I walk in, and I just love to hang out there. So I just so appreciate your whole style, your whole vibe.
There's definitely some sensory things there, like how it makes you feel, how it smells when you walk in. And I kind of do talk about that a little bit on my website about scent memories and how, they can be good, they can be bad. And there's definitely an emotion that's evoked when you walk into some place and you all those senses kind of hit you at the same time.
Well, it's working for me, Sam. It all is good. So let's go back just a little bit then. Actually, let's kind of go back to the beginning and talk to me a little bit about where your decorating love started.
Well, I guess I wouldn't really have ever pinpointed that out for myself, but as I've kind of worked through this process of having a store and just having the type of store that I have that is, kind of home and decor based, I do recall as a child that I was constantly rearranging my room, probably weekly. Like I would move furniture around. I would be like, Mom, I want to paint my room a different color or whatever. So I do recall that being a very intricate part. And I've always liked pretty things. I've always liked things to be decorated. And my mom would not claim this, but she is probably very intricate in that because she was always doing that stuff too. I mean, my mom was way more handy than I am. I mean, my mom was totally doing remodels by herself. I mean, laying floor and painting and all that stuff. And really my dad was too. They did everything. Like if we had a house, they would remodel themselves, flooring, paint, the whole gamut. So I think that was just like as a child growing up, that's just kind of what we did. And my husband is very much like that too. Like we are very much DIYers. We are very much, my husband is actually extremely talented in pretty much anything he does, not to toot his little horn for him, but I mean, he can pretty much build anything. Like if I told him I wanted a new kitchen and he had the time, he would build me cabinets from scratch, and that's what would happen. But so I mean, I think I've just kind of like evolved into these situations where that's kind of just been kind of a fuel of sorts for creativity. And I've always been very creative. I didn't love art when I was little, but I liked it. Like when I was in junior high and high school and stuff. Like, I mean, art was a fun outlet, but I wasn't like, I wouldn't have called myself an artist. Like I wasn't drawing sketches or painting or anything like that, but I definitely have a very creative mind. And then that kind of goes into, I did end up going to cosmetology school, really nail school at first. So I actually dropped out of really, I guess technically junior high. My last school grade was ninth grade, and I kind of intermediately went to do homeschooling, and that wasn't for me either. And so I knew I wanted to go to cosmetology school. I wanted to go get my nail license, and in order to do that, you do have to have some type of a high school diploma or a GED of some sort, and you can do that at 16. So you can actually, or you could, it might be different now, but at 16 you can go to cosmetology school as long as you have one of those criterias. So that's what I did. I went to nail school. That was in Sears. So I would have been 17 when I went, and it took me about 3 months, and graduated and immediately went and worked in a salon with a lady who actually did my nails at the time. And I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand just because it's also a creative thing. Nail artistry is definitely a creative outlet when you get into the nail art and some of that in general. Just really actually sculpting nails is an art form as it is anyways, and can be very difficult. So, I mean, I've kind of just always kind of been in this like creative outlet. And so I think that decor thing just kind of plays into that. And I wouldn't call myself a designer by any means, but I do love making spaces look good, and I love making them look good for minimal. Like you don't always have to go out and buy, Pottery Barn stuff or these really super expensive pieces. I mean, I love when you look at stuff in pictures, like I love those those expensive things and whatnot. And sometimes it's just not palatable to do that. And so you find other ways to make that same look like you want it to, and for a price that you can afford. And that I do kind of put that into my buying process when I am looking for products for the store is, like what is something that I would feasibly spend on something like that? Like if it's a couch, obviously it's going to be a little different opposed to like a candlestick. But that is a big part of when I buy things and when I purchase things for the store is I do look at it as these items are somewhat disposable. And is it something that I'm going to want to keep for forever? Is it like an heirloom piece that I'm willing to spend a lot of money on? Or is it something that I'm like, probably something that I'm going to be over with in, a year or two, and I'm going to be looking for something else. So, and making sure that value is still there and that it's still good quality. And then, I mean, going back to dropping out of school, I mean, that could have been a detriment to my life. I could have used that as a detriment. I could have used it as a crutch to, not be productive. And that's just not really ever been my, even as a small child, I was always very strong-willed and always very, very much in charge. My mom would tell you, very much in charge of my own destiny and my own life and all that kind of stuff. So I actually told my mom when I was probably in 5th or 6th grade that once I turned 16, I wasn't going to go to school anymore. And she, of course, was like, yeah, that's probably not going to work out for you. You're probably still going to have to go. And that's actually exactly what happened is after ninth grade, I was 16 and I was like, it's just not for me anymore. And it never really was. I never really loved school. I actually hated school. I didn't mind the social aspect of it, but it was never anywhere that I felt like I was excelling or exceeding or was being kind of fueled to what I would have liked to do. And I do see that in my kids a little bit, my oldest one especially, who's about that age, 16, and they're kind of seeing that the school system is not really preparing them for what's to come and not really kind of honing in on maybe their specialties. And I kind of always felt like a fish out of water at school. Like can't really say I didn't really ever feel like I felt like that I was in, but I just always felt like that there was just something missing. Like there was something intricate missing to the school process for me that was leaving me unfulfilled, I guess maybe, and that I needed something deeper, something with more meaning. And I kind of, as I've gotten older, and obviously you learn about yourself and you learn about, how you react to things and how you, why you react to things or so on and so forth. And I actually had a conversation with a friend she was actually a neighbor, and I think she does some type of stuff with psychology and so that kind of type stuff. So she made the comment to me about I'm a huge introvert, major introvert. And I think as I get older, I have these like ebb and flows where I'm like, I can be social, but then I'm like, there's sometimes that I'm like, can't people today whatsoever. And a lot of that might come just from being in the store and you kind of get peopled out. And so you have to come home and like decompress. But she made a comment to me about that I need meaningful conversation. I'm not a person that can just be like, hi, how's your day? And then just be like, okay, like I need to have like a substantial conversation. And it's very true. And so I kind of feel like that, like I need substantial things. I need substantial conversation. I need something that has some weight to it in order to feel like I'm getting value out of it. And I guess I just didn't feel like I was getting the value that I think that would have really, enlightened me to want to be at school. So, went and got my GED and went to nail school. And I was actually worked at Sensations Tanning Salon from the time I was 14 until I was 21 or 22. And I would do, if I wasn't at the tanning salon, I was doing nails and vice versa. So if I worked in the morning at the salon, I would go to my nail studio and do it at night and then flip flop depending on what the schedule was. And then I did hair and nails until this year, 3 years ago. And then now I'm here doing retail that I never would have ever imagined that I would have a retail store.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're incredibly resourceful, that you just figure things out. So you dropped out of school, you've educated yourself in all of these ways. You've found ways to really grow in the areas that have depth to you and have meaning. So now you've created this store, Lee Brennon Charles. Tell me, where did the name Lee Brennon Charles come from?
So Lee Brennon Charles is all of my boys' middle names in birth order. So it's Tristan Lee, Garrett Brennan, and Braden Charles. And that was really, I sat for really, not forever, but I knew I wanted a name that was meaningful and that was meaningful to us. And that was something that could encompass a huge umbrella of things. If I ever decided to, let's say I want to have a salon again and I want to, it could be Lee Brennon Charles Salon. We could encompass it with, whatever we wanted to do. I just one day was going through, names of people. And if you kind of notice through a lot of my products that I make, specifically our perfumes, they are named after people in my family. And so I kind of trickle that down from the name of the store. But it just one day came to me and I was just, going through things that were meaningful to us and things that were meaningful to me and my husband and things that maybe just or just kind of more things that me and my husband talk to each other or talk about each other and stuff like that. Because we all have, little cutesy little nicknames for each other and stuff like that. And I was trying to, integrate some of that into a logo and a brand and whatnot. And it just, one day I was like, Lee Brennon Charles, that's it. That's what it's got to be.
So I love how you're able to really personalize the name of your store and then for that to grow with you. So along those lines, what else do you really love about your job, about owning this store?
Well, I probably going back to the creative, I love to be creative. And I think in the beginning, the furniture painting was that's a very creative thing. And so right now, my creative outlet right now is the candle making. And that kind of like, I would have probably never have imagined that that was a creative outlet, but there is, a whole process in that of, sourcing fragrance oils and kind of making that into almost a story of sorts. And then there's, like what kind of container is it going to go into and what am I going to name it? And I designed the labels. And if any of my people who listen to this, and if you've watched my evolution of labels over time, like I'm constantly changing labels, and that's just, it's just a creative, and it'll probably never stop because I'm just constantly like in this creative atmosphere where I need new things, I need to change things, I need to do things, and that kind of goes back to me redecorating my house and redecorating my bedroom all the time. Is I constantly need something new and fresh, and sometimes that's a bad thing. I've gotten a little better as I've gotten older, where I can be a little content with some things. But it's just my brain. Like my brain is constantly thinking and, what can we change? What can we do and make things different and make things fun? And so, I think it's just the creative outlet that I can have with that. And then going into just the store itself, remerchandising tables and remerchandising the store is fun and creative. And it's almost like you get to go in and like redecorate all over again. So, that's fun. I could probably list a ton of things I dislike. Paperwork would be one of them, but like just that creative outlet for me is probably the most fun. And of course the customers, you build relationships with people that you probably would not have otherwise. I probably would never have even ran into, some of my customers that come in on a regular basis, and that's super fun. And now that I have the store and I have people that kind of help me out, I have a virtual assistant that helps me out through my website and through my email list. And then I do have a couple of friends that help me out in store. And that's been, for right now, has been kind of a fun thing to just kind of work with people in that kind of position where they're kind of helping me like lead the direction that I'm trying to go. I think that is a new challenge, but kind of a fun challenge and kind of something that's kind of fulfilling because I'm seeing people that they believe in what I'm doing. And so they're like, willing to help me, and they're doing it better than what I could do, if that makes sense. So I think that those are the things that I definitely love. Like currently, over the stages of the store, I'd probably have different answers at different times, but for right now, that's definitely it.
So what about you were talking a little bit about the things that you don't like in your business. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are your greatest challenges?
So, I think probably for anyone, unless you're an accounting, the bookkeeping aspect is probably, and really for someone who is creative, it does not trick my trigger by any means. So that definitely, is, I don't even know if I'd even call it a challenge, but it's definitely just not something that I like to do. And then honestly, the most challenging thing is really just balancing everything that you have to do within the business. And then you have to get outside of the business and, how are you successfully being a mom? How are you successfully being a wife? And, retail will suck the life out of you and it will encompass you. It can feel very overwhelming. It can feel very much like the world is crumbling in on you because I'm sourcing products, I'm making products, there's a huge mindset behind like you buy something, you're like, is anybody going to actually buy this? Is anybody going to like this? And then you're like, I have to buy 24 of them. Are 24 people going to want this? And am I going to get stuck with it? And if I do get stuck with it, I'm going to have to discount it. And then, of course, you discount it, so then you don't make your money back on it. And so there's a huge, huge mind game that happens. And you can really, and I have gotten myself kind of trapped into that at times where, and then you get afraid to buy things. And then you're like, well, I'm just going to kind of play it safe. And I'm not going to get too crazy. And I'm going to just, buy a couple things. And really, when I first started the store, that was very much my intention, was to have just like kind of one-off things and nothing that I had a lot of, because I wanted people to have the sense that like, I'm the only one who's going to have this, item. And a lot of that was, I was doing antique type pieces or thrifted pieces. So, it really was that was the only one that I had or found. And I think as you scale things, that gets more challenging because you are constantly looking for more products when you're doing that. Unless you just happen to go into like a flea market and you're buying the whole thing, or you go into an estate sale and you buy everything and you have some place to store it. that can just be very challenging. It can be challenging even when you are buying products that you are buying from an actual traditional wholesaler of, just making sure that, am I ordering enough? Am I ordering too much? Am I paying too much for shipping? Am I going to be able to take that product and, be able to integrate the shipping into it and still make it a valuable product where people are going to want to buy it and they see the value in spending the money for it? So yeah, it's the retail. I did a coaching group with a gal, and she said, if someone were to ask me if they should open up a retail store, she's like, I would tell them no. And to a certain degree, I would say the same thing, and not to be like, don't do it because I'm doing it type thing. Just because nobody tells you, nobody talks about like all of the things that go into it. And especially when you're starting small, and like I am the only, I shouldn't say I am now. I was the only person doing everything. I was painting the furniture. I was working the store. I was, making sure I had product. I was rearranging the store. And I have had lots of friends and lots of helpers. And my husband in the beginning, not so much, he does help out, but not so much in the capacity as he was in the beginning. But we would go into my store and we would flip the store when I had it in my garage. And it would take me 2 days because I would have to take everything from one side and move it over and then redecorate that and then move everything back. And him and we would get into fights with each other because why are you doing it like that? And I'm like, why are you doing it like that? So we would get it done, but it never ended very well. And it's actually, now that I have a larger space, it's a little bit easier to do that. And then I had friends that would come in and help me, and, we would knock it out, and she could do stuff and I could do stuff. Cause really my husband was just the manpower. He was the one just moving the big things around, and then I was doing all the little things. So, I mean, that's something I've done, flipped the store here recently. It's been a lot easier because I can kind of do a table at a time, and I don't feel like I'm being toppled in with decor. If you've ever tried to move a room and move it around, it's frustrating. It can be frustrating if you don't have places to put stuff. But I think as far as anything else that's challenging, I mean, the financial aspect of things, I mean, that's just, business in general. I mean, you're constantly just kind of watching, and, retail can be tricky, and especially retail I'm not selling stuff that's like a have to, like, you don't have, like, I'm not selling bread, So those things are definitely niceties, and that can definitely be a little challenging in certain times of the year because I'm not selling anything that anybody has to have. So it's definitely a luxury type situation. And you kind of have to wrap your head around that and realize that there's going to be certain times of the year that people are just not going to be buying stuff, or they're going to be buying little, and prepare for those times as best you can. I think it's even hard because it seems like every year it's a different time. It seems like it's not ever very consistent. I mean, like, we have a pretty good idea. I was actually talking to a friend just not too long ago, and we were talking about January and February historically are slow times for retail. And this year I felt like it trickled a little bit into March. It's definitely like you almost do forget, but then once you're in it, you're like, oh, I remember this last year. I remember this happening last year. And then kind of historically summertime, summer in like that July, August can kind of be a little slow. So, I mean, I think just really having your head wrapped around that those times are going to come, and prepare for them, not only financially, but mentally, that, this too shall pass per se, and that, you're going to kind of end up back on the other side, and kind of that.
Going back to the transition that you made from your garage to this larger store, you really increased your hours a lot at that point as well. So tell me a little bit about how you manage your family and you're being a wife and being a mom and also owning a business.
I can't really say that I balance it well. There's definitely times that, I'm really heavy on the mom scene, and there's sometimes I'm really heavy on the wife scene, and then there's sometimes I'm really heavy on the store scene. And I think that giving myself a little bit of grace that, like, I can't do everything. I can't do everything today, and I can't do everything well today. But, tomorrow I can, do a little bit more in this area, or, a little bit more in that area. So, I mean, like, for instance, this week I had, let's see, what is today, Thursday. So, I worked the store Tuesday and Wednesday, which, when I work the store, I'm locked in. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything, that kind of thing. So, like, obviously I know that those days I'm going to have to do whatever I can within the business that I can, in amongst helping customers that can relieve some of that pressure from when I'm not there. And like, so today has been full on house and mom day, you know? And so I think that for myself, making sure that like that kind of same thing, like going back to like mentally, that like that I know that I can't do everything and I can't do everything well and I can't do everything today, that tomorrow or maybe Friday, or Saturday or Sunday, I can take those days and utilize them for other things. Like if I know I spent a lot of time at the store this week, and so, Sunday's got to be the day that I do laundry, or Saturday's the day that we go out and do, X thing. And we have baseball starting this weekend, so my life's really going to get interesting as far as kids and schedule goes. But and then of course now that I do have those longer hours, like I knew when we moved down there I was going to have extended hours, and I knew I wouldn't be able to be there all day every day. So I do have some friends that do kind of come in and help me out and relieve me of having to be there all day every day. And I'm not open on Sundays and Mondays, which I think I actually had somebody not too long ago ask me, like, why is it that there's so many stores down here that aren't open on Mondays? And in my opinion, maybe I could be wrong, but, Saturday's the day that you most likely want to be open, and we would still like a weekend. So, like Saturday or Sunday, Mondays are kind of our weekend. And it could go back to just being a hairdresser. And that was historically, hairdressers normally don't work on Mondays. I don't know why, just that's how it is. Probably very similar, just because they work on Saturdays and they still want a weekend of sorts. So that does help, because then I do have at least one day during the week that I can get, something done. But, so now that my store is in the Wolcott Galleria, and we are part owners in the Wolcott Galleria building, and I do a lot of the building management. So that's added kind of another layer of things onto the plate a little bit. It has been kind of a wild week this week, and usually every week. And then there's like one week that like nothing happens, and I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to be like even keeled. And then the next week is crazy. So I just kind of rolling with the punches of sorts, and just knowing that I can't do everything all the time, and that I have to kind of take it a day at a time. And that's kind of what my husband will be like, what are you going to do today? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll just find out at 9 a.m. when things start calling or getting emails. We'll just, see what the day throws at me. That's kind of how I roll sometimes.
It sounds to me like you have learned a lot in the years that you have owned your own business. And I wonder then if you can give one piece of advice to someone who's considering starting a business, what would that be?
As much like this is probably going to, like, if my husband heard this, he'd be like, you're such a liar. But honestly, really kind of investigating and really talking with people who are doing it and asking them what their struggles are. And I think that like if I would have really went in and talked to some people who are doing retail, I probably wouldn't have done it. Maybe. I'm kind of strong-headed, so maybe not. So, and I'm not saying that to like discourage people, like, but just know what you're getting into, like know what it entails and know what you have to do in order to like jump those hurdles. And I think that just being a little bit more aware of what possibilities will come down the road and how things can change. And probably most definitely being pliable, like be willing to shift if you need to, be willing to, move her to a different arena, or, maybe you're selling this thing and it's not selling. And so you have to pivot to selling something else, and don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to, kind of reposition things. I remember in the beginning, I was like very adamant about, like if I was going to be open hours, like these are the hours, like, don't be closing. Because there's definitely been businesses that I've been to, and one day you go there one day and they're closed, the next day they're open, and then you go back the next day and they're closed. So you're never really, there's sometimes not some consistency there. And so I was like very adamant, like if you're going to be open, you're going to be open. And unless, and I used to say, if I'm sick or dying, I won't be here. And that would be the only time that I would not be open, or if something was going on with one of my children. So I think that with that kind of being said, like you have to have some kind of malleability with that, but still kind of sticking to like kind of some values and some, I hate to say a business plan because I'm anti-business plan, but like sticking to, like, you have like an idea of how you want things to go and sticking kind of to that. But yet when things arise that are not working, that you're, willing to like kind of pivot and shift and make things work. And I think that I'm not the best business person. I'm not the best, I don't even know what you'd say. I don't even know if I'd even call myself a business person, but I am willing to try things. I'm willing to change things, and I'm willing to try something out to see if it'll give me a different result, instead of staying kind of stuck in one thing just because that's where I'm comfortable. And I think just being an entrepreneur in general, like, you have to be uncomfortable, and really anybody in general. I mean, even with my kids, like, I tell my kids, like, you have to do uncomfortable things in order to grow. You have to do uncomfortable things to, test yourself and test your limits. And that never changes. You will have that throughout your whole life. If you're constantly challenging yourself and constantly doing things that make you uncomfortable, that's the only way you'll grow, and that's the only way you'll, evolve into other things. And that, I think, is it stinks that sometimes to do that because it's painful and you don't always get the results that you want. But as you kind of get down the road, you'll be like, okay, well, now I understand why that happened like that, or why that, was so challenging. And I've learned so much from it, and now I can combat it, and it's not a big deal anymore. So.
Well, Sam, I think you're walking your talk. I think you do a lot of things that are uncomfortable and learn from it. And just your whole life looks like just a lot of being willing to take those chances. So I really appreciate you being here. I always love to talk with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and some about your store and your life journey. I just am so grateful.
You are so welcome. Thanks for asking me. It was a pleasure. Sure. Anytime.
Right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Leading Life, a production by the Center for Conscious Communication, hosted by me, Stacey Carruth. I'd like to thank Ty Pierce for his artwork and technical guidance. If you haven't already, make sure to follow Leading Life on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and catch you again next time.